Back with us on the C Morning Show. Let's talk about life, right? I mean, there's always a lot of uncertainties about life, and climate change has unfortunately increased levels of uncertainty about our future. And if we see what's going on in the world right now, we are facing climate emergency. You know, it's like sometimes, the previous generation probably would think that, I'll leave this world in a few years anyway, but we still have the young generation.
Right.
We will leave this earth to the young generation. They have the same right to live the life as best as possible, right, Shafira?
Yeah, I agree. And the fact the world is home to at least 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 to 24, which is the largest generation of youth in history. Okay, such a huge number. And it marks a lot of questions.
Yes.
Young people are increasingly aware of the challenges and risks presented by the climate crisis and of the opportunity to achieve sustainable development brought up by a solution to climate change. Young people's unprecedented mobilization around the world shows the massive power they possess to hold decision makers accountable.
Yes, right now probably we see that, young people are currently the victims of climate crisis. We are all the victims of climate crisis, including the young people. But the young people can also be valuable contributors to climate action, just like the guests that we have today from Unicef Indonesia Youth Network member, Erwin Mahendra and Dava Devano. And we will discuss more about their role in representing the youth in the upcoming COP28. Good morning,
Good
Dava.
morning.
Also Erwin.
Hi. Wow, you guys are amazing.
Thank you so much.
So, speaking about the climate change,
Yes.
and you guys are representative from a young generation, and you guys will speak in the World Forum. What are the challenges faced by Indonesian youth and given countries' high climate risk ranking from your point?
Okay. First of all, is the challenging is about. Firstly, Indonesia is an island country that most at risk from climate change, and then based on the data on climate Children Risk Index, Indonesia is 46, the most vulnerable country that affected by climate crisis. And then not only that, the challenges is about, firstly, children and young people is also stakeholder think, you are a passive participant, not active participant in decision making. So, but sadly, from all of the climate financing, it's only 2.7% that climate financing that prioritize children and young people for the climate program. Moreover, just 40 countries from all of countries that mention specifically children and young people in their climate commitment, especially in national determined contribution. Is the first challenging in policy. About participation of children and young people.
Yeah. What are the challenges? How are children affected by climate change in our daily lives? Because I guess this has not clearly, according to the numbers or the stats, clearly this is not the focus at the moment when we talk about climate change or climate crisis. But we want to see now. Please help us see what are the real challenges that children face in the face of climate change or climate crisis. Maybe Dava can.
Okay, so I think the real challenge that faced by the youth and children especially is the first thing is participation in decision making. Because we know that youth and children now probably have a space in policy making, but a lot of tokenistic practice are happening in policy making processes. So I think that's the most and foremost challenge that faced by the youth and children. And then the second one is we face social insecurity, including education, well-being, and as well as health and wealth. And the next one is that children also face water scarcity, disaster risk, and economic uncertainty. So it's linked to all of the very roots of our life. So for example, if children are not be able to access education, they will probably get, doing young age marriage. So that's a very sad situation, unfortunate circumstances that they have to face because of the climate crisis happen.
What is the relation?
Yeah, I was gonna
with
say
the
between
young marriage
climate-
and then the climate change.
So we know that most of Indonesian citizens are live below poverty.
Poverty, right.
And most of the parents thinking that, especially because I've grown up in Karawang, and it's a very rural area at the time. So most of my friends, like most of my parents' friends, are telling my friends, which is
female friends, you're saying.
yeah, female friends, and telling them that you should get married after you graduate from school. So it's the word that I oftenly hear from their parents to my friends, my female friends.
Right.
So that's very unfortunate, and mostly even until now, Karawang, most of my students in Karawang didn't have knowledge about what is college. So they don't know what to do after they graduate from high school, and they just thinking of working or marriage. So those are the options.
But what is the connection between climate change or climate crisis and child marriage?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the connection there?
So there is there is circumstances where if the parents are not able to give them feeding their child, and then that's because of they have lack of economy, like their income become decreasing.
Oh, because what's happening in the
Yeah.
world, what's
Climate
happening in
change
nature.
caused the economic,
Yeah.
Like if they're
the economic
farmers,
situations.
and
Yeah,
then
they're farmers
because climate change changes the way they farm, and they probably don't get as much yield, and thus
Yes.
it affects their economy.
Exactly.
It could possibly bring them into poverty, and
circle.
thus, wow,
that's
it's
the
complex.
circle is
Yeah.
very connected.
Oh,
with
okay.
the
So,
climate crisis.
how or what can the youth generation, especially in who lives in rural areas, to mitigate that situation? I mean, to like you guys have the opportunity to speak up to in the World Forum. What about them, and what are you guys will bring to the world about this fact?
So I think, not every youth and young generation had this privilege like us to speak in the World Forum. So we are really emphasizing the voices, the young voices, the unprecedented young voices to the world. And I certainly believe that young voices have to be recognized by the policymakers.
Yeah.
And the Global Forum is a stage for us to doing that. So by we attending COP28 later, it would be a privilege for us to speak about our friends, our fellow youth in Indonesia, that unprecedented youth voices in Indonesia to become the priority of the government national plans for the future development. So this is the change for us, and if we push the international community, it also pushing our national government.
Right. Is there a national what does the national policy look like at the moment in terms of upholding children's rights in Indonesia right now, Erwin?
Okay, so what I mentioned before, only 40 countries that mentioned specifically children and youth.
Not including Indonesia, you mean?
That I have seen in Indonesia NDC.
Right.
Our government have mentioned children, but in general, not in specific. Their needs.
Okay.
What are the specific children's rights that we have to fulfill?
Regarding to the climate change.
Regarding to climate. The first is about education, especially in how they can access the information about the climate change in easy to understand.
Okay.
Because as we know, this issue is very difficult to understand because a lot of difficult terminologies.
Jargons.
Yeah. Like in a certain community or certain of people, right?
Like adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage. I think we need to make it simple that children can understand, and if children understand, they are able to take an action.
Yeah. So that's one.
Okay.
That's one. And then what else?
And then about the health,
The health.
because the children is most at risk about the climate change because about the heat waves and then droughts. If I think we need to strengthen in the social service policy that sensitizes to children especially.
Okay, so what do you mean by children and young is more vulnerable to the climate issue compared to adults?
Okay, maybe I will back on my experience on 2021. I was in front lines of emergency response that I respond about Cyclone Seroja. It's a disaster related to climate. I was able to see how stressful disaster condition, post-disaster condition.
Yeah.
I can see there can fulfill the basic needs of children, especially about the food of nutrition, and then right to education
School.
because their school was damaged by flood and landslide.
Yeah.
And then how about the livelihood economic? Because I was in Kupang Regency that in coastal area.
Okay.
Every single year the sea level is rise and
Yeah.
affected their homes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's about the displacement of children.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what makes the children and the young generations more vulnerable to
Yes.
the climate issue.
How do we make sure that the youth is really listened to this time? That I know that you guys will keep bringing this issue every year at COP, but other than speaking and expressing, there needs to be the other party who is listening and actually going to integrate this and make this into a policy that can be implemented globally so we can really make this change, right? How are you guys going to make sure that they will listen? This time they will listen a
Yeah.
little bit more at least. Yeah.
So it's a very challenging because I've been engaged with climate policy for about 3 years
Yes.
with the government, local government to the international level.
Yeah.
So it's very challenging, but I think there is one thing that can be the solutions if that youth can be really recognized, their voices can be really recognized is when our voices is institutionalized.
Oh,
Nice.
So there is a need for government to give a space for youth. So let's say we establish a national youth council.
okay. Wow, that's good.
When we have the same rights as the House Parliament,
Yes.
so we can intervene the policy draft
Yeah,
making.
yeah.
We can give the voice. We can give feedbacks, comments, and suggestions to the policy make.
Yeah.
And that's the one of the way to make our voices is really recognized and heard by the government.
Yes, and to make sure that the message is well delivered.
Exactly.
So speaking of that, speaking about the climate issue, it's not just about the policy. The business industry,
Yes.
business sector is also taking a huge part for this cause. So from business sector, how people in business industry in this sector help reducing impact on climate change, especially targeted in young generation and kids or children.
Because these business
To
people,
reduce-
by the way,
Exactly.
they have children
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So they need to really listen, right?
How can you share the voice so the business sector can listen to the voice as well?
Okay, I think in the business cycle, it must consider about the children rights in every process of business, from pre-production, production until post-production, because they need to operationalize the business that responsible to environment.
Yeah.
Besides, they also contribute the greenhouse gas emission.
Yes.
So I think for example, for the corporate social responsibility program, that must sensitize on children and youth, especially in environment issue. Engage them in every project cycle to ensure their rights is fulfilled on their business process.
Okay, right.
And-
That's important.
Yes, and other than the business sector, of course, the government as well, because the government and the parliament members are the ones who make the policies. We remember when the local government of Bali and Jakarta decide to, okay, no more plastic bags in supermarkets.
Yeah.
Everybody does it. All businesses do it,
Yeah.
right? So what do you both want to say to the government of Indonesia, especially in regards to protecting children's rights in the face of climate change? Tell the government.
Okay.
Dafa first.
Dafa.
So, it's of course climate crisis is not an one-night job.
Yeah.
Of course, everyone has to be incorporate. Everyone has to be involved in this effort to make our world more sustainable.
Yeah.
And it's really complicated. And I would say like, yeah, I've been engaged with a lot of various sectors from business sector, government, and NGOs, and they all have their own desire.
Well, what do you want from the government of Indonesia?
So, I just want that our government could include the children and youth in national development plans. So that's one way, like one good initiative from the government to include children and youth in their national development plans, because it hasn't been done with from the government of Indonesia for recently. So every policy draft that I saw, either NDC or LTSD, it's not including youth and children with it. So it's such an unfortunate, children and youth are not really recognized, even though we have been given space for policy making processes, in that policy making processes. But we are not really recognized. So that's a tokenistic practice.
Okay.
I would say.
That's a homework. What about you? What do you want? What do you want from the government of Indonesia?
I think climate resilience is light on children and young people as next generation.
Yeah.
So involve us in every single decision making. Put the children and young people specific need on every layer policy, both in village level, sub-district level, and national level.
Yeah.
So and then pentahelix collaboration from the NGO, civil society, government. We need to address this issue with collaborative action.
I
Yes.
agree.
Yes.
We need more young people like you guys to be in the team of policy making.
Yes.
So there's a lot of voices can be, put it on the draft and then to be finalized.
Yeah.
And can be the action.
Yes.
That's the thing. Take an action, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much,
Immediate
Dafa Erwin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
And best of luck for COP28. And you guys will be living this month?
Yes.
Yes. All right. Best of luck and safe flight. Enjoy the journey. Okay. Okay. We'll have a break, but we will have more updates from around the world when we return. Please stay with us.